quick video. We need to understand what language means. We understand the vowels, or we should. We understand consonants, which we should. We understand the alphabet, and a lot of us, because it's so sing-songy, we understand it with the A, B, C, D. Yeah. So with words, we understand that words have meanings. They have definition. And the way that we use words not only communicate our thoughts and our feelings and our actions and conveys messages and information, but also words create a vision, creates a understanding. Words paint a context, right? This is important why we need to use the correct words to convey the correct message. If not, we have a whole lot of confusion, a whole lot of room for interpretation. And interpretation is like opinions, and opinions are like assholes. Every single one has one, right? So to make sure whatever you're trying to convey gets to the heart of the message, whatever it is, you have to use precisely the correct words in the correct manner so people understand the wavelength that you're trying to capture. With that being said, we as Americans in particular, because I see this more so of an American issue than an English language issue. And the English language ain't shit. And I'm going to say that, and I don't give a damn how you feel about it. I'm still tripping off the fact that PH makes the F sound. But P makes P, P, P. H makes H, H, H. But somehow together they make F. So argue with your mama. The English language is trash. Anybody who speaks multiple languages will even tell you that. As a person who speaks more than one language, I speak more than English. The fact that we put the adjective before the noun is like, what? Like White House, whereas in other countries, in other languages, they would say house white. And I know to Americans, it's like, ew, why would you say that? But I promise you, you are the only ones who do it like that. Just like you're the only ones who do the U.S. imperial system, whereas everybody else does the metric system, right? Americans love the exceptionalism. Americans love to be like, I'm going to go against the grain because I said so, right? But back to the point. The word right
does
mean correct.
However, when we are discussing politics, right should only be used in the context of right versus left, Republican versus Democrat. But it should not be associated, the word right, with correct. And I'll even go so far to say we shouldn't use the word right unless we are talking about documents such as rights, Bill of Rights, or we are talking about direction, correct? We're going left, we're turning right, and of course, degrees, right angle. But other than that, I do not believe we should interchange the word right for correct, because most people are super unaware of themselves. They did not do any shadow work. When they hear the word right, they assume you are saying correct instead of saying right as an opposition to left. And when I say left, especially in this country, we're not even talking about left like Marxists. We're talking about left like AOC. Miss Identity Politics herself taxed the rich, didn't tax the rich. Now she fool out loud with her boyfriend in Florida, maskless, while we are all here to fend for ourselves. So the American left is a joke. But in other countries, it's not. So when the term left is being used, it is in opposition to that authoritarian and sometimes fascist type of belief and mentality, which exists very heavy. Not just the MAGA hats and Trump. I'm talking about throughout the world. Bolsonaro in Brazil. He's the Brazilian Portuguese version of Trump. So, like, it's an issue. It's a global issue. I believe the reason why we should not use the word right is because a lot of people on an unconscious level, unaware of themselves, will associate anything that is right, authoritarian, big brothers watching, censorship. They will assume that is correct. They will assume that it's paternal, that it's patriarchal, that is of order, that is divine order, that is straight from Jesus Christ himself. Instead of thinking, yes, it's coming from a right winger, but that does not mean these things that this right winger is talking about is correct. Interestingly enough, my tongue wanted to say right and white, and we know that phrase, we as black people, especially in these white supremacy streets. Right is often seen, white is right. We see this very often. And on a subconscious level, you're dealing with people who are very racist, very small-minded, very uneducated. It doesn't take much to play on their fears, to play on their ignorance, to play on their stereotypes. And when you're using such words as right, to them, that means correct. Because all the monstrosities that Trump was, these right-wingers believed him, even though they knew Trump never gave a damn about them. Trump never gave them a chance on The Apprentice? Is that what it was called? I don't know. I never watched that show. But they know Trump don't give a damn about them. They know Trump would never allow them a seat at the table. They know Trump would never even give them the time of day in real life. Trump's time would not be something they could buy. But they wanted to believe in Trump and make Trump a god because Trump was parroting the same racism that they believed in and mixing that with good old patriotism, good old patriarchy, good old quote unquote make America great again. And you know Trump. Trump has the same educational level as these quote unquote rednecks. So when I say education level, I mean like his vocabulary is just as short and stifled as those folks. So when he was saying these catchy racist terms, he kept it very marketable. Build the wall. MAGA. Make America great again. Fake news. All terms very short, very catchy, very to the point. And those people, those racists, believed in him. And Trump was very good at mixing, because he got that Gemini energy. He a Gemini. He good at his words. Ruled by Mercury. You know. He was able to mix in some of the things that he knows and people wanted to hear. Bring jobs back. The government been saying they're going to bring jobs back since NAFTA. That was Reagan. Now it's Biden. You ain't getting them jobs back. Globalization and capitalism said nah. They said nah to you, and they saying nah to the earth. So it's not happening. But they wanted to hear their rhetoric. They wanted to see that boldness. They wanted to see a Reagan-esque person who looked like they were against the grain. They were against the machine. They were their own man because that's how they were feeling. He was able to tap into that energy. Knowing damn well Trump don't give a damn and he aligns with the same people that are oppressing those folks. And the gag is Trump. Mr. Trump, Mr. NBC himself would be against the grain. He is a product of the system, born and raised. But because he was able to touch into those subconscious, murky energies of people who have not done their shadow work, who are not self-aware, he was able to manipulate that. He was able to say the quiet part out loud, say the racist part out loud, fit the aesthetics of Hitler, blonde hair, blue-eyed man, American dad, the American badass, the cowboy. He was able to project that image and them folks ate it. And now look at them. They probably the same folks who was on the striking line in the John Deere strikes. Probably, most likely. And now they're realizing that they got Just like black people realized, what, 5 years ago, they were scammed with Obama. They're realizing now that they were scammed. And those who believe since the beginning, since the giddy up, since hope, and yes, we can, like Bob the Builder, yes, we can. They're realizing now, after grandmommy done lost her house, grandmommy done lost her property during the 2008 housing crisis, and Flint water's still dirty. Black people now realizing that the slick talking Negro might have slicked us out of our common sense. And yes, Barack Obama, he had. And he continues to do so. Because black people still love holding on to their black figureheads even when they're toxic. Hashtag the baby. But that's not this conversation though. Words have meaning. And words paint pictures. And when you don't use words in their proper context, as well as if you're able to use that magician energy and toil with people's emotion, you can create something like January 6th. Even though it wasn't even hard body, no one was pressed, no one was scared. Hella feds infiltrated that bitch, a whole lot of ops. But when you're able to manipulate energy and use words very flim-flamsy, this is exactly what you get. And this is why words are important in its correct context. Because a lot of people are processing a lot of information and oftentimes on autopilot. And what you say could always be misinterpreted. Not even on some double entendre shit. I'm talking about just you said something, but someone heard it differently. Whether it was the tone of voice, whether if it was a woman or a man saying it, whether it was a different region. You know, people react to different things depending on who says it. You notice. You've experienced yourself. If you're a woman, you've been mansplained. We know this. So when we're dealing with people, especially in hairy situations, and they don't have the best education and access to information, and they hold biases, it's very important when we are speaking to these folks to keep it short, sweet, and as direct as possible, and do not mince words, especially politically charged words, and associate it with automatic correctiveness, approval. Because this is why people could sit there and listen to the bullshit of Trump for 4 years and now are just realizing that they got.
Because on a unconscious level, where most of us do our processing, we do it from an unconscious level. This is why 90% of communication is non-verbal. It's body language. Hence why people can always mistaken a resting bitch face on a black woman as aggressive, whereas other black women are just like, she's just chilling, she's fine, like, relax. Context, non-verbals. The same thing applies with right and correct. When we use the word right to mean correct, we are unconsciously signaling to the people listening to the message that right means correct. So anything that is right-leaning, anything that is conservative, anything that is of that nature is correct by virtue of calling right correct instead of right as a direction. When we do that, whenever we say things that are outside the norm of right, outside the norm of conservative, then that seems extreme. That seems unfitting. That seems like it does not belong in the grand scheme of hierarchy. So that's why when we talk about communism or socialism or mutual aid or connecting with your humanity or even the subreddit of anti-work, people look at that and say, ew, what is that? That's wrong. That's an abomination. That's against our principles. People really lose their shit because what you're talking about is more left leaning. And since left is in opposition of right and right has turned into correct, then anything that you say or do that is left leaning is automatically seen as the enemy, is automatically seen as something wrong, something bizarre, something outside of the norm, something that is automatically a no. And I think that is why when it comes to speaking in terms of collectiveness, in terms of solidarity, in terms of left leaning, where we do have our freedoms, we do have our rights, where we do have worker co-ops. People look at that like, this is bizarre. This isn't Europe. This isn't some other nation. This is America. This is right leaning. This is American pie. This is order. This is hierarchy. This is subservience. Before we really even get into conversations about what leftist looks like, we have to first decouple words and thoughts and the way that we communicate, the way that we choose our wording, first and foremost, because you can't create a vision of a utopia, a vision of Atlantis, a vision of we as humanity kumbayaing if people can't even understand what you're talking about, if people can't even draw the image in their mind, if people are still thinking that right means correct. Because you're always going to have that uphill battle if the unconscious is in polar opposite to what you're talking about. If the unconscious is triggered to automatically think what you're talking about is a grift, or what you're talking about is unrealistic, or what you're talking about somehow against the grain, and because it's against the grain, it's automatically bad. You're going to have to work with re-educating people on words and context and definition. And we live in an era where people don't read for fun. People will literally tell you, too long, didn't read, and keep it that. We literally live in a world where like academia, academics, education is seen as a snore, as a bore. We live in a world where it's like, if you can't put it in 240 characters, bitch, I didn't read that. We live in a world where it's like, oh, it's too many words and I have to use a dictionary to break that thing down. Like, oh, I'm not interested. We live in a world where we have acronyms and we have abbreviations. Like, we live in that world. So, uphill battle indeed. But that's my video. Let me know what you think. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.
Peace.